The quickest way to feel better about your body is to stand next to a softer man. That's also one of the quickest ways to stay exactly where you are. Because the comparison that does the most damage isn't always the one that makes you feel behind. Sometimes it's the one that makes you feel relieved. And if you're looking for another podcast that's going to tell you being better than average is enough, this isn't it. This is Iron Suits, where strength wears the crown. I am Marwan Kiddu. So I've been thinking about comparison lately, and I think we've sort of misunderstood it. I don't think most men lower their standards. I think they quietly replace them. And one of the easiest ways that happens is comparisons. Because we hear the same thing, don't we? Comparison is a thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Compare yourself to your own potential and all that crap. And look, I don't think comparison is a problem. You got to compare. Otherwise, how do you know what's possible? Right? How do you know whether you're improving? The problem isn't comparison, because if Dave next door was looking, he's got a badass body, and you're like, you're sort of stuck where you're not stuck. You are sort of like, you have him as your benchmark, right? When we used to be younger, we buy all these magazines, fitness magazines, to want to look like these people. And I'm sure when he started the business as well, you had a sort of a figure, a figure in mind, something inspired you to get to that level. Anyway, so the comparison is not the problem, is the direction that you're looking. Okay? And I'll come to what I was talking about in a second. Because when you compare up, you see somebody leaner than you, stronger, further ahead. That comparison can be uncomfortable. And it is. Like, I go to the gym and I strive to be better every single time. There's a couple of guys that are, there's not many people that are my age. A lot of the people my age are in dog ass shape. So I have to sort of look at the younger guys, get inspired by the younger guys who are pushing hard and hard. I'm like, hell, I've got to keep up with them. I've got a 19-year-old boy who is pushing every day, so I've got to keep pushing. It's just like every day, Dad, I'm lifting more than you. I'm lifting more than you. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm not trying to lift as in like compete with him to lift as heavy as him. Because these guys are on a next level. These guys they got some sort of elasticity in their joints, right? So they can lift anything and they just recover the next day, even if the form was like shit, for the lack of a better word. Whereas for us normies, we have to be careful, because our bodies are like our nervous system has got like a sort of a fuse, and sort of like, how should I say? The best way I can describe it is like the body keeps a score. There's like all these minor injuries that you've had, all these sort of knocks, I want to call them. The body remembers these, right? And so it wants to protect you. It senses a threat. Whereas for these guys, they're still fresh, right? They haven't built up that sort of, God, I don't know. My brain is not quite functioning today. They haven't built up that memory, shall we say. Anyway, so I don't think looking up is what's keeping most men stuck. I think the most dangerous comparison is the one below you, the one that lets you breathe out, the one that says, I'm all right. Look around. I'm doing better than most men my age. And that's a danger with me as well, is that I can look around at the gym and think I'm doing better than most people my age. This guy's in dog ass shape, and I'm walking around with a ripped six pack. Anyways, I digress. Do you ever notice what happens after a round of golf? You're in the locker room, and you and a few of your buddies are getting changed. One is talking about his cholesterol. The other one says that his doctor doubled his statins. Somebody else laughs because his chiro reckons that 18 holes is pushing it now. So you all laugh, and the conversation just carries on. It's almost like correcting diagnosis, right? In this day and age, has become a badge of honor, because once you get into the late 40s, 50s, bad backs, bigger waist, statins, just become part of the conversation. Now, here's what's interesting. There is a decent chance that same morning you were standing in your own bathroom, looking in the mirror. Fuck, when did that happen? Because if you're honest, you haven't liked what you've been seeing for a while. You turn sideways, your stomach gets there before the rest of you. You suck it in, it still sticks out. You let it go, it drops. You look at your chest, it's puffy, man boobs. You catch yourself thinking, I used to have edges, now I've got curves. You stand up a bit straighter, take half a step back, as if the extra distance might change something. Maybe the mirror in the other bathroom is better. Same body, different mirror. And somewhere in your head, the negotiation starts. It's not that bad. At least I still train. Things will calm down in a couple of weeks. A few hours later, you're at the golf club. Your polo comes off. You look around, and one of your buddies fighting with the next hole on his belt. Another has completely lost shape through his chest. You still look like you trained. You're in better shape than most of them. And for the first time all day, you feel better without even realizing it. You don't know why. Room becomes the standard. That thought that you had in your head in the bathroom that morning, I'm doing better than most men my age. Not because your body changed, because your standard did. And I think that's a part most men never notice. The room became the standard. Not in one decision, right? In hundreds of little negotiations. Because I've never met a man who woke up one morning and decided, you know what? Today is a day I lower my standards. Like, nobody decides that. One day, you stop asking yourself, am I becoming the man I wanted to become? And you start telling yourself, I'm doing better than most men my age. Those are completely two different conversations. So think back to when you were 25, maybe 30. You knew exactly what you wanted. Six pack, bigger arms, chest that looked like you trained. Go back to what I was saying about magazine. All of us would bought these magazines and sort of had a vision of what our bodies wanted to be like. You see what's happened now? The scoreboard has changed, not your body. And once that changed, the game changed with it. Because now, every softer man you stand next to makes you feel that little bit better. Every time you compare down, the finish line moves another inch until one day, average feels successful. You didn't stop chasing excellence. You just kept moving the finish line until average became enough. Neville Goddard used to talk about living from the end, seeing the result before the evidence arrives. And whether you're listening to this or watching this, you already understand the idea. Before you build the business, you can see it. Again, I go back to what I was talking about with the magazines and the business. You could see it before the Rolex, that vision. You knew the reference number. Before the G-Wagon, you knew the spec. You had the picture. Before you had the proof. So here's what I don't understand. When did you stop doing that with your body? Because at one point, you knew exactly what that man looked like. You didn't need to compare yourself to anybody. The image was already there. And somewhere along the way, you stopped looking at it. And you started looking around the room. And that's when the standard changed. And maybe that's why you keep looking around the room. Because looking at the picture you once had would force a very different conversation. You would have to admit you're not where you wanted to be. Not where you said you'd be. Maybe not even close. And that's uncomfortable. So comparison creeps in and quietly does its job. It softens the verdict. Because you don't have to ask, does this body represent me? You can ask, is this better than his? One question demands honesty. The other just demands somebody softer. And that's a much easier question to answer. Because there's always somebody softer, somebody heavier, somebody taking more medication, somebody who stopped training years ago. You can always find somebody who makes your decline look reasonable. But is that really the fucking man you're measuring yourself against? I don't think comparing down is confidence. I think it's relief. And relief can become addictive. Because every time the mirror asks something uncomfortable, you look sideways, find somebody doing worse, and the question disappears. At least I'm not as bad as him. Listen to that sentence. At least I'm not as bad as him. Is that your fucking standard now? That's not a standard. That's damage control. You're no longer asking whether you're proud of what you've built. You're asking whether somebody else has let himself go more than you have. And as long as the answer is yes, you get to feel okay. Not proud, not fulfilled, okay. And that's what comparison is being given you. Not evidence you're doing well, but permission not to look any closer. Maybe that's why I've never liked the phrase better than most. Because better than most, according to who? Most men? The same men who gave up years ago? The same men who've convinced themselves that soft is just what happens after 40? The same men who laugh about statins like they've earned them? Why would you ever be your measuring stick? The strange thing is, you would never run your business this way. You would never benchmark your company against the weakest competitor in the market. You would never tell your team, we're doing better than most. You would ask, where can we improve? So why does your body get a different scorecard? Why is the one thing carrying all of this allowed to be measured against men you don't even want to become? Maybe that's a real trap. Comparison didn't just change how you saw your body. It changed who you were asking for permission. Once average men become your judges, average is the only verdict you'll ever get. So next time you hear yourself say, I'm doing better than most men my age, don't ask if it's true. Ask yourself something much more uncomfortable. Are those men even the men you want to become? Or are they just the men you've been hiding behind? This is Iron Suits, where strength wears a crown. I'll see you in the next episode.